Welcome to everybody who's here for the first time. We're going to get into a couple of quick announcements and then move into our program. I see we've got Daniel with us, so I'm anxious to introduce him to everyone here. And let us, though, before we do that, let me just jump over real quickly. And I want to take a quick moment to both thank our sponsors and introduce a brand new sponsor. First of all, I want to thank Method, who has been with us since the very beginning. Jeff and I met through Method, and he actually ended up bringing me into Method after we started Product Coffee as well. And Method designs and builds digital software products and services for enterprises, and does that by helping, and while doing that, helps those organizations grow into best-in-class modern product organizations and CX organizations. And then I want to welcome our brand new sponsor, Product Management University, headed by John Mansour, who many of you know is the head, the principal of Proficience, that has been one of the key players in the Southeast for product management training and consulting and coaching for the last couple of decades. John can't be with us today, but we wanted to get his logo in here. John's just launched a brand new website at productmanagementuniversity.com, where you can go and enroll in his online courses. He's got a strong focus on, he's got a course on product management, a course on product marketing, and a brand new course on demos, on the demo process and doing killer demonstrations. So check that content out. We'll look forward to having John with us here in the near future as well. Pragmatic Institute, of course, has been training product managers around the world for longer than anybody else in reality, and they have been with us since the very beginning. We want to thank Pragmatic Institute for their continued support, and Feature Upvote, who powers our ideas board at productcoffee.com/ideas, where you can make suggestions about the types of programs that you'd like to see here at Product Coffee, vote on other people's suggestions, and we can have a conversation about that. And if you need to deploy a quick, easy, inexpensive voice of the customer tool for your own product, for your own portfolio, featureupvote.com, it can be implemented in about 15 minutes, and you can start collecting feedback from your customers right away as well. So thank you to all those sponsors who make our weekly program possible. And we're looking forward to, please, as you reach out to them, let them know you heard about them on Product Coffee so that they know that their investment is paying off. But today, we have got a real treat. We're welcoming Daniel Elizalde, who has been leading product management teams and products for 20 years. Daniel, as I mentioned to some of you earlier on the call, is the host of one of my two product management podcast that I listen to very regularly. And he's been really focused on enterprise product management. Daniel, when I was at IBM, that was hugely valuable to me because so much of the content out there is so focused on smaller startups, and having that voice of the enterprise product management world has just been hugely valuable to me. I am truly honored to meet you today. And Daniel's got a new book. We're going to be talking about his book today. It rocketed to the top of the Amazon bestseller charts in just a couple of days. Huge congratulations. And it's just a testament to your career and the impact that you've had. And with that, I'm going to hand the camera over to our friend, Daniel Elizalde. Welcome, Daniel. So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's such a nice introduction. I don't know how to follow that. So I'm just going to say thank you. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It's really great to be able to talk to a group of product leaders that are also focused on enterprise. Not everybody, but most of you. So it's a great opportunity. So I appreciate that. So should we just go straight into the topic and then we can do some Q&A? Is that how we should do it?
Yeah, let's jump into that, and then once we get through your main content, you wanted to give away a few books, and I'll be ready to do a random drawing when we get through your main content, and then we'll do some Q&A as well. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Right. So I'm sharing my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we've got you.
Perfect. Okay. I like that I can see faces. Sometimes you can't. So that's good. So I can see smiles, or I can see snoozing, so it's always good. By the way, just as a disclaimer before I start, I have a 2-year-old daughter that's going to daycare, and she picked up the latest bug. So I have this terrible bacterial bronchitis. So my voice is kind of not the best. And so if you see me cough, or my voice kind of goes up and down, so that's what's going on. So that's the real world, I guess. So, but anyway, happy to be here. So let's get started. So today I'm going to talk about accelerating your success to the B2B innovation journey. And I will share an introduction to the core topics of my book fairly quickly. I'm really excited to jump into the Q&A to have a discussion with you all. A little more about myself. So thank you again for that great introduction. My name is Daniel Elizalde. I've been in technology for about 22 years. My background is from electronics engineering. I grew up in Mexico City, moved to Austin, Texas after college, and I've been working in mostly industrial type companies from the very beginning. Most of my career has been on product. I've had roles in very little startups, in agencies, in system integrators, in growth startups, super large corporations. Some of the relevant roles here, I was recently the vice president, head of IoT for Ericsson in Silicon Valley, leading their innovation labs in IoT and 5G. I was also the head of products of a growth startup called STEM, which is AI-powered energy storage. A lot of what I've been passionate about throughout my career is it's the collision, so to speak, of technology and climate change. So I'm very passionate about that space, to the point that now I focus 100% of my time as an independent product advisor for climate tech. So that means companies building digital solutions for something energy or climate related. So it could be electric vehicles or chargers or smart grid applications or energy efficiency or carbon capture, things like that. I'm a mentor at two of the top climate accelerators in the US. And I also teach at Stanford University. So very broad set of experiences. So today I'm going to talk about my latest book. And so let's get into it. The premise of the book goes back to, I've been doing B2B type of product management for many, many years. And I've noticed that a lot of products fail to get traction in the market. So it's not about this mythical hockey stick that we see Silicon Valley tells us, right? A lot of enterprises really struggle with this. And I noticed as I start to talk to a lot of leaders in the space that there's not a lot of information for B2B. I don't know about you. How many here work on B2B? If I can get a show of hands, is that how we do it? Yeah, so I can just scroll here. Oh, the large majority. Okay. Yeah, so tell me if you feel like this, but I always felt like an outlier in the product profession because everything that you read out there is for B2C. So it's all about A/B testing and getting traffic to a website. And if you work in industrial type of applications or any B2B enterprise, that really doesn't apply. So the genesis of the book for me was to capture a lot of my experience into a B2B body of knowledge. And so I started with this premise of B2B products fail to gain traction in the market. And as I started looking into statistics and a lot of interviews and a lot of people, the reality was that most companies fail to launch successful products because they don't build something that the market wants. So a lot of B2B companies are very technology focused as opposed to customer centric. And so when they hear about the statistics of, well, your product is going to fail or we're having trouble getting traction in the market, what I hear most often from the executives I work with is that they want to accelerate the success. And by doing that, what they really mean is they are going to throw more developers and try to build something faster. I tell this anecdote once that I was coaching a VP of product at a company, and they were very busy with a agile transformation. And it was time for us to talk a lot about strategy. And they said, no, we don't have time for strategy because we are working on agile transformation to be able to develop faster. And so what happens is that, yes, you can develop faster, but you're developing the wrong product faster. The analogy I like to make is that you're building a faster car, but if you don't know where you're going and you don't know how to drive that car, you're going to be placing that car in the weirdest places. You're going to crash it at the first turn. So a lot of companies accelerate by adding development speed, but also accelerate by adding sales. And this is very common in large corporations. And not if you ever seen this, where the solution is to add more salespeople or to increase the marketing budget to try to push whatever product you're building, whether they want it or not, right? And so in my experience, accelerating success really means reducing the time and the risk between idea and customer value. Okay, say it again. Accelerating success means reducing the time and risk between idea and customer value. And what does reducing time and risk really mean? It really means making less mistakes. If you take the time to understand your customer's needs, that time is not going to be wasted. You are going to be able to build the right product faster, and you're going to be able to get success faster. Now, a lot of people confuse this with moving fast. Being customer-centric doesn't mean necessarily fast, right? You're not compressing your timeline, especially in B2B, from a year to like 2 months, or like what I read in some of the B2C literature, like you run 100 experiments in a day. It's like, that doesn't apply really. It's more about making less mistakes so that by the time you go through this process, you have more certainty that what you are building is going to have traction in the market. And therefore, the approach that I advocate is to follow a customer-centric approach to innovation. Now, a lot of companies want to be customer-centric, but in my experience, there's a lot of confusion about what that means, especially in B2B. A lot of companies think, well, just talk to sales and whatever they tell you, well, we're going to build that. Or we're going to send a survey to a few people, and that's what we're going to do. And that's being customer-centric. The reality is that customer centricity has to be ingrained in the way you do product throughout the complete innovation journey. So let me talk about what that looks like. Here is the core premise of my book, the B2B Innovators Map. In the book, I divide the innovation journey from idea to your first 10 customers in these 6 stages: strategic alignment, market discovery, user discovery, solution planning, prototyping, and early adopter. Now, every product needs to go through all these stages. Unfortunately, most companies start either at prototyping or at the early adopter stage. So by that time, they're already in the engineering-led, technology-led type of approach, right? So the ideas start at the beginning. And another thing that I mentioned here is that this journey, the way I designed it, is from idea to your first 10 customers. And the reason why I advocate 10 customers, it's because there's so much uncertainty when doing innovation that you don't want to add to the uncertainty and the confusion by introducing some abstract terms. How many of you have heard the term that we are after product market fit? Right? Many of you. But what does that really mean? You ask 10 people, they will tell you 10 different things. And it's very hard to measure. I've talked to large corporations that have a spreadsheet of 100 metrics of what product market fit means. Startups just make it up as they go and everything in between. So to remove that uncertainty, what I advocate is having a strong milestone of 10 first customers. And in B2B, that works well because a customer is a company, it's not a user, right? So a customer can have hundreds of users. And by the time you provide value to 10 customers, you've pretty much seen everything that's going to go wrong. And at that point, you're ready to have discussions with your leadership team about further investment, investment in technical debt, hiring a sales team, etc. Right? But at that point, you have strong customer evidence that your product has a future in the market. So Before I go into each of these stages, I want to tell you one more thing about this flow. The way I designed this innovators map, it's divided in two halves. The first half, strategic alignment, market discovery, and user discovery, is focused on understanding your customer's problem. So that's really the discovery stage. You're not building anything at this time. Once you have this understanding, then you can go into the second stages, solution planning, prototyping, and early adopter, where you're actually building a solution to the problem that you identified before. Notice as well that this is not a linear process. There's these arrows that go forward and backwards, meaning that to go from one stage to the next, you have to complete certain criteria. But if you are not able to complete that criteria, you can iterate in that stage, or you can go back to a previous stage. And that's what creates the acceleration, because you're not wasting time developing something on a hunch and it's going to take a year to come out just to know that it was wrong. But by having these quick iterations at each of these stages, you are having solid customer evidence that you have the right market, that you understand your users, that your solution is desirable, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So far, so good. I see some nodding here. Okay. Excellent. I'll go faster so we can get to the questions. So now let's talk about each one of the stages and what is entailed in one of those. In the book, I detail, of course, each of the stages, and I wrote the book as a practical guide. So it's very hands-on, and it's how you actually implement this as a leader in your organization. So it has two flavors. How do you actually do the work from a customer perspective, but also what work do you need to do to bring your company along to support you throughout the innovation journey, which a lot of companies, that's where you lose leadership, right? And then they remove the budget and then you're done. So the whole journey starts with strategic alignment. And, I wasn't sure about including this strategic alignment stage because I thought, well, most companies building a product, they already know what they're building and therefore they're aligned and off you go. Well, it turns out that the majority of companies that I talk to don't have this strategic alignment, meaning they are not clear on what customer problem they want to solve. They are very focused on the problem they want to solve from themselves. We need more revenue. We want to go into a new market. We need to defend this competitor. But instead of doing that, then you need to be customer centric and say, what problem are we solving for our customers? And therefore, are we all aligned that this is an area that we want to go into? Okay. So getting that strategic alignment as a product leader is essential. If you don't get that alignment at the very beginning of your innovation journey, then you're just going to be spinning your wheels. If you're a small company, probably you're going to run out of budget. If you're a large corporation, you're just going to be doing innovation theater. You're just going to be tinkering things around, but you really don't have traction. So once you have that strategic alignment, by the way, part of the strategic alignment has to do with getting dedicated full-time people to do this work. Right? A lot of companies say, go build this or go innovate. And it's just you and try to get your friends on the weekend, right? It's like you need a commitment, you need a team, you need time, you need goals, you need backing from leaders. And I go into a lot of detail in the book of what you need. So assuming you got all that, then you can go into the market discovery stage. Now, the strategic alignment portion is what problem are we going to solve for our customers? So for example, we want to help our customers reduce the price of their electric bill. I work in the energy sector, right? Okay, that's enough of a problem for your innovation team, for your product team to go figure something out. They don't need to tell you exactly what it's going to be or exactly what, but it's directional. So in the market discovery stage, you need to figure out which from the universe of possibilities, which market or markets are you going to focus on? Who are you going to try to help reduce their bill? Is it large corporations? Is it government buildings? Is it skyscrapers? Is it schools? What sizes? What geographies? What kinds of use cases for reducing their energy bill, right? Are you going to focus on solar panels? Are you going to help them change light bulbs? Like, what is it that you're trying to do? So in this stage, I talk a lot about how do you create a market segmentation, and then how do you find, usually it's called the buyer. I call it the champion, and I'll go for a second, which is the person in those companies that is responsible for that outcome. Meaning, who in your customer, your prospect customer, is responsible to reduce their energy bill. That's the person that you need to talk to. So here you're going to find a lot of them and talk to them and understand why do they have the problem and how could you potentially solve it. If you're able to have a narrow target market to go after, or at least to explore at this point, because you're not for sure that you're going to end there, right? You're exploring the problem, and you have talked to enough champions on that particular target market, and you think you have something, then you're ready to move to the user discovery stage. In the user discovery stage, here's where it starts to get a little bit interesting, because B2B is very particular in that you don't have one user that is the buyer and it's the one that gets the value. In B2B, you have the buyer, or what I call the champion, that is responsible for that business outcome. And then you have a big user ecosystem of people that are going to use your product. And the outcome of all of those people in the user ecosystem needs to add up to solving the problem of the champion, because ultimately you're helping reduce the problem of the champion, right? So you need to reduce the cost of their energy bill, but then you might have 10, 12 people, different personas involved in that process. And when you start getting into more industrial type products like I do, then you have the whole enterprise life cycle. You have installation, you have onboarding, you have commissioning, you have maintenance, you have operation stages, and all those require different people that are going to interact with your product in different ways. And so your role here in the user discovery stage is to discover that ecosystem and then understand what are their pains. Because opportunities for new successful products come from understanding some critical pains of your users that you can provide a new differentiated solution. If you can't find how you can optimize whatever process you're helping them so that the champion achieves their goal in a better, faster, cheaper way, then you need to go back to the market discovery stage and find a different market or find a different champion, or go back to strategic alignment and try to go for a different problem to solve. Now, by this time, you're done with the first three stages, so you should have a really good understanding of your customers' challenges. So now it's start thinking about solutions. In the solution planning stage, you're going to work with your team to sketch out what potential solution you could build to solve your customers' problems. And this is where you start talking about technology. Do you need an enterprise software? Do you need an app? Do you need IoT? Do you need hardware? Do you need AI? What kind of modules? How is it going to be? Now, you're not designing the solution. You're just kind of getting an idea of what it would be. And the more important part here is that you're going to create what I call a hypothesis roadmap, or an experiment roadmap, which is you're going to have a lot of questions and a lot of assumptions. So you're not going to go and build this thing. You're going to go into the prototyping stage and then prototype all those assumptions to get customer validation that you're going in the right direction. Okay. So once you have an idea what a potential solution could be and you have your experiment roadmap, then you can start prototyping. And so you are in the prototyping stage. Now, the key here that I want to emphasize is that the fact that you understand the customer problem doesn't mean that whatever your team dreams up is going to be what the customer like. Right? They could be a bit disconnect. And so you have to be very diligent in putting prototypes in front of your prospects very early on so that they can tell you, yes, this is the problem that we talk about. Yes, this solution would solve my problems. Yes, you're going in the right direction. And that's why in the book, I focus about the prototyping life cycle that starts with sketches and then simple click-through prototypes and then no-code prototypes and then more elaborate prototypes until you have a full working prototype. And what you're doing in this stage is not only building that progression, but you are looking for three key things. You're looking for desirability, feasibility, and viability. Now, in B2B, that is a little bit more complex. So I have around 11 areas for desirability, viability, and feasibility that I cover in the book. Because you have to make sure that, first of all, whatever solution you're proposing is desired by the customer. Second, that you can make money out of that solution that is viable and there's a potential business model there. So prototyping also has to do with prototyping business models, prototyping pricing, prototyping packaging, prototyping offerings. And then, of course, is the feasibility. Can you actually build it? And I'm very adamant about this because a lot of companies fall in the trap of saying, well, it's just software, we can do it. I've seen that. I work with a lot of companies that they just weren't able to pull this off for whatever reason, right? And in the book, I have a lot of examples. So if you're able to create prototypes that are desirable, feasible, and viable, and you keep building them up until you have working software and hardware, at some point, after putting it in front of customers so much, one of your champions is going to say, yep, I am ready to pay for this. And so that constitutes your first customer, and then you're moving to the early adopter stage. The early adopter stage, it's key in B2B because here where I talk about is pilot projects, right? Anybody that's been in B2B knows the pilot purgatory and how that's where all projects go to die. And so it's very important to have a real strategic approach on how you're going to go through these pilots. How are you going to provide value to your customers? And what is it that you're going to learn? Because remember, this whole process is geared towards saying, we're going to deliver value to your first 10 early adopters. So that means that you need 10 different companies where you're going to run prototypes and you're going to demonstrate that you can deliver that value. And this is very important, especially in B2B, right? Because the fact that somebody buys your product doesn't mean that they're going to get the value that you promised. You don't know that. You've never deployed this solution, right? And B2B is complex. And so that's the goal of the early adopter stage, is to work very closely with your early customers to make sure that you can deliver the value and learn all the different things of what it takes to deliver that value. And once you have 10 of those, and you've seen everything that can go wrong and will go wrong, then you are ready to move out of this initial 6 stages. And what happens there is, it doesn't mean that you're ready to go to scale and you're a unicorn or anything like that. The only thing that happens is that you have customer evidence that your product can get traction in the market. And so you're in a very good position to go back to your leadership team and say, we learned all these things. Now we're ready for the next level of investment, either on business development, or we need a bigger development team, or we need to start opening to partnerships or exploring channels, or we need to pay some technical debt, right? But now you have real evidence that if your company invests in this, there's a potential for profit, right? Before that, it's not very clear. Now, granted, you're going to be keeping your executive team informed of every single stage. And in the book, I have sections on every chapter that says, at this stage, this is what your leadership needs to know, and this is the go, no go flags, right? But the important thing is, once you're out of the early adopter stage, meaning you have your first 10 successful customers, then you can have those discussions. Some companies decide to kill the product because at that point you might say, you know what, this is not going to work. And so you might go back to prototyping. You might go back all the way to strategic alignment, right? But again, this is going to take a lot less time than if you just have a gut idea, develop it fully, and realize it doesn't work. Okay, and with that, we can go into a Q&A. So here's my email, and we're going to do also some raffles for free copies of my book. But also you can go to b2binnovator.com and download a free chapter. Okay? And by the way, if I may, Jason, if any of you here work in the climate energy type industries, reach out. I'd love to connect and learn what you're working on. So, Thank you. With that, I'll stop the share and we'll go back to here.
Yeah, Daniel, we actually had a new attendee today who joined us for the first time, and I won't call her out by name. I'll let her reach out to you as well. But she's actually very interested in getting into that climate tech space. So I think that'll be a great connection for you as well. And thank you so much. This has been fantastic. So while folks are thinking about your question, go ahead and start. If you have a question, just go ahead and use your reactions panel to get your hand up, and we'll dig into a couple of things. And I've got one that I'll kind of trigger you with here in a moment as well. But why don't we start with at least giving away a book or two? And what I've done here, let me share my screen so that people can join in the fun that I get to see. Here we go. Come on. So many controls. Here we go. All right. So I got everybody who has checked in to the session. That means if you logged in, you checked in. It does not look, oh, interesting. Okay. So if you logged into the Zoom call, we've got you checked in here, and we're just going to hit the button. And can everybody see that?
Woohoo!
All right, here we go. Here we go.
Where does it stop? Where does it stop?
And Ode Maras. Hey, congratulations, Ode. And Ode has a question up here as well. Why don't you, we can ask it for you, or you can jump on and do it if you like. I will wait like 5 seconds, and if not, I'll ask.
I'm not sure you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so the question is a bit on my side. I'm on the hardware side, mostly IoT products, and so prototyping is always very hard, right? Like you get into how do you build a PCB and all these fun stuff. And so I wanted to hear a bit more about what would you advise in terms of prototyping steps for companies that make hardware products, basically, like Tim and Himanshu, I think, will be interested as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Hi, Ode. So there's a few things that I can tell you. If some of the things that I've done in the past is early on, I focus on desirability, feasibility, and viability of my solution. Therefore, the hardware prototype doesn't have to be a custom PCB, doesn't have to be the final thing. It could be a mashup of parts that you purchase off the shelf and you put them together, right? I've run prototypes where I have an industrial box and inside of it is an iPhone, and I just put an app and you do that. Something that is as inexpensive as possible to test. So for example, yes, you might buy you're in hardware, so you might buy a $2,000 FPGA board from National Instruments and put it inside and program it. That's not going to be your final thing, and your leadership team might say, our margins are terrible. It's like, no. What we're trying to make sure is that if we put a hardware like this in the field, will it give us the right data, or will it perform the right way? So that's one thing you could do. Some of the big things that I recommend, and they're in the book for hardware specifically, is that when you're prototyping, this is not the time to optimize for size, for performance, or for cost, right? Because that will come in later, and that's very expensive. I once advised a company that they had a hardware product, and they were already in talks with a contract manufacturer to create a smaller version of their PCB. They've invested $3 million on that project, and they didn't even know if the customer wanted it. That's not the time to do that, right? So that's one approach. And then the other piece of advice, since you mentioned IoT, what I advocate is oftentimes the end customer is not looking for the hardware itself. It's looking for the value that the end-to-end solution is going to give them. And so you can simulate in a spreadsheet some data and just ingest it in a prototype. You can make up the data. What you're trying to figure out is, if we were to have a dashboard, or if we were to have an application that provides you these insights, would that be of value to you? given the state of technology today, customers believe that it's like, yeah, I mean, you can build it. The fact that you can build it is not a problem, right? So you don't have to demonstrate that. Like I've worked with some IoT companies that they are building the PCB and the connectivity to the cloud through cellular. It's like you can buy a $15 board from Amazon and that comes off the shelf. Like you don't have to prove to me that you can send data to the cloud. So anyway, so you can make believe a lot of stuff. The important thing is to have clarity on what is it that you're prototyping and what is the thing that if the test fails or succeeds, helps you move forward. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Look at the value and not the format, basically, I guess.
Exactly. And there will be time for that, right? But I think that because it's a different mindset, it will take a lot of your effort to convince mostly engineering and leadership to do that, right? Another example that I can tell you, just very quickly, used to work with energy storage solutions, and these are these big industrial batteries that go into basements. Well, to make sure that they fit in the place, we actually build a cardboard prototype. So we got a bunch of Amazon boxes with tape, and we create one of those things that looks like a fridge of carton, and we were able to measure and figure out how it would feel, right? That the outcome was an important thing. We didn't have to spend $200,000 on an actual hardware prototype of the case of the battery, right? That was not the time to do that.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me, by the way.
Yes,
sure, absolutely. Happy to have you with us.
We do need to give Ode a special thank you for actually reaching out to Daniel and inviting him to join. I never would have dreamed that you would accept so quickly. And thank you, Ode, for making that connection and bringing Daniel to join Product Coffee.
I'm a big fan, so that's why.
I got a note from one of our other premium members that she's going to be really fangirling today as well. I'll let her self-identify if she wants to. So yeah, you got a lot of fans here, Daniel. Yeah.
Oh man, I need to come here more often. That doesn't happen.
We'll welcome you. All right, I'm gonna see if I can show my screen this way, and we're gonna draw another one here. Can everybody see my screen now? You should be able to. Excellent, great. Okay, here we go. That's a little bit faster. Let's see who's up next. I was going to say, this is starting to look rigged. There we go. David Merrill. Congratulations, David. And what I'll be doing, just so you know, is I'll be sending Daniel your email addresses, and he will send you a link to download the book when the time comes. So,
wow, that's fantastic. Although
yeah.
I'm a little disappointed because I was trying to save all my winning luck for the lottery. But
sorry.
I guess I'll take what I get.
Sorry, I hope we didn't steal the lightning from you.
Maybe this will be a new trend for me. So
there you go. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And congratulations on that. So, Daniel, one of the things that I noticed before we do our next question here is, and I wanted to ask you to just kind of have a little bit more of a fun topic here related to the book, because I was kind of skimming through it. I just got my copy yesterday, but one of the things that you talked about in your innovation journey is you made a cool comparison that driving innovation is like driving a race car, and your objective is to go as fast as possible to win the race and beat your competition. You said there are 4 things that you need in order to really win there: speed, skill, grit, and patience to win the race. And I love the combination of speed, skill, grit, and patience. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I'm a big car guy. And people that have worked with me in the past know that, a Daniel presentation is not complete without a car analogy. I've taken race car driving lessons, and I've raced and all that stuff. And so that comes really from my experience at the track, where you really have to, your goal is to get as fast as possible. And of course you need the grit, but it's a lot of patience because you have to wait for the right moment. And it's about finesse. It's not about jerk moves. It's not about accelerate and brake. I mean, it's all about finesse and timing. And then if you take the first turn and it's not perfect and you didn't get as much speed as you wanted, you have to put that in the past because the next turn is coming and you have to focus on the next turn, right? And so eventually you'll start to get the full speed. So I wanted to have something like that as an analogy in the book, and I'm really glad that you picked it up.
Yeah, it was a fun one. Some neighbors of mine, some friends. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Lemons race, the 24 hours of lemons.
Yeah.
Where you have to buy a car for $500 and make it run for 24 hours. We've been talking about doing that. I think it'd be a hoot. But
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So let's do it. Let's do another one here. And if you have any more questions, you can drop them in the chat or you can raise your hand. Either one. Would love to hear some other questions from folks. So here we go.
Hey, Jason, Cortland had a question as well. I don't know.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, great. We'll do that. All right. Now this is just not working. Nope. You don't get another copy. Gonna shuffle these up and try again. And it goes to Melanie Cipher. There you go. Congratulations, Melanie. Yeah, let's see. Let's see if we can find Cortland's question here. Cortland, you want to just jump in here?
Sure. My question is, in the prototyping process and when you're evaluating customer value for the different solutions you're providing, any tips on the relative value of the different things that you're able to solve? I mean, you could go to problem A, B, C, they're all related, but A is going to be more valuable than B or C. How do you quantify that a little bit or to some degree?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's kind of hard to quantify value from that perspective. There is one book a friend of mine just released called Selling Value, and he has a great approach to quantify value. That's the best book I've read up on that topic. And so I'll let you look at that. But the way I think about it is when you are looking at your user ecosystem, you're going to have, let's say, your champion, which is your buyer, and then let's say 3 personas that are involved in delivering that value. So when you start working with each one of those personas to understand their specific process and their challenges, then you can evaluate, and this is a little bit of the art of product management, which one of those pains is, if solved, would help accelerate the goal of the champion, right? And so the way I evaluate it is 2 ways. Which one is the pain that is more conducive to accelerating the champion's objective? And which one is your company more better suited to focus on? Because it could be that it's something that is not strategically aligned or you can't do right now. And so therefore, focus on the one that you can do with a differentiated solution. And if you solve that, the value proposition for the champion would be enough that they would say, yep, this is valuable, I'd like to buy it. So it's hard to quantify. Again, that book helps a lot, but that's the approach I follow. Does that resonate a little bit?
Yes. And it's very different from a B2C product.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very, very different.
Yeah, that's a great call out. Great, thank you.
In the book, I actually have this analogy or this example about an HR recruiting system where let's say that what you're trying to demonstrate is, let's say the champion is looking to increase the surfacing of good candidates for specific roles. Like that's why they went out to the market to look for something. And so when you're delivering a recruiting system, you're going to have the candidates and the recruiters and the admins and the managers and all these people, right? And so your focus might be on the algorithm that the recruiters are going to use to surface those people. And maybe the experience for the candidate to submit the resume is going to suck. But at this point, doesn't matter, right? As long as you get data in to demonstrate what you really need to demonstrate, that's what you should focus on. And that's the value that you're after.
Great. Thank you. Good advice.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Very good. It was a great question. Thank you. And I see another one that we're going to come to here in just a moment. And I've got another one as well. But let's do one more book here. And let's see here. We're going to go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, it's rotating. Dine is asking if I'm an F1 person. Yes. So huge. So I think while it's rotating, what lessons have I learned from F1? Grit. And then actually the F1 documentary of Formula One Drive to Survive, it's fantastic because it's like 1/3 racing, 2/3 business of racing. And so the lessons for business are so good there to see how the money moves and how they have to make a profit and the performance. And so if you ever watch that documentary, not only it's amazing from an F1 perspective, but from a lesson of business, it's really cool. Sorry, I had to go there.
No, that was great. I was going to take you there whether you want to do or not. So great. And our winner of the last book is Manesh Patel of Aviana. So congratulations, Manesh. I will remind everyone also that if you fill out the survey, you should get an email after today's session with a link to a survey that we'd like you to fill out, or you can go to productcoffee.com/survey. And if you fill out the survey after this session, we do a monthly drawing for a free book from our product management bookshelf, which is at productcoffee.com/bookshelf. And you can choose any book from the bookshelf, and one person each month will win a book from the bookshelf of your choice. So fill out that survey as well. And we're putting your book on the shelf too, Daniel. So there you go.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
I'm putting the link to the book in Amazon for those who are interested in checking it out in the chat.
Excellent. Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, and let's see here. Are there any more questions in here that we have? I did, a couple people have commented on this, and I kind of want to divert a little bit from the book itself and talk a little bit about you. And if that's okay. And one of the things I'm curious about is you've had some pretty significant transitions in your career in terms of the types of things that you've been focused on. You defined yourself from an industry perspective as a specific expertise in product management, or a specific focus in product management. It's been enterprise product management for a long time. And then you shifted into IoT product management, really being a voice in IoT. And now you're shifting into climate tech. And that focus is pretty impressive, but those are some vastly different kind of perspectives. I'd like to know a little bit about what's driven that journey for you and what's bringing you to climate tech right now.
Oh, that's an excellent question. I'll start from the end, right? I am very passionate about climate. I grew up in Mexico City, one of the most polluted cities in the world, right? For me, it's been always very prevalent. And I believe that climate is one of the biggest challenges that we have and the biggest opportunities. Plus, the technology is incredible. So I'm very passionate about the space. In fact, I moved from Austin to Silicon Valley to work in climate. And now I decided, now that I'm full-time as a consultant again, to focus on climate because I'm passionate about it. And the interesting thing, you mentioned my focus has been very different. In fact, it's been a narrowing down of my focus, because one of the things that I've learned early on when I first started as an independent consultant is that as a product manager consultant, I couldn't compete with some of the greats, right? Because there's very established people that, everybody knows. And so I couldn't, right? And so what is it that I have that's unique to me that I can defend? Well, enterprise, right? And then when I got into IoT, I've been working in IoT for over 20 years, right? Most of my roles have been IoT related. I started teaching at IoT at Stanford. I was head of products of an IoT company. I was vice president of IoT at Ericsson, right? So it's like, that is what I do. And so I started to add the emphasis on that. And so I became the IoT PM. And I kind of dominate that space. And now moving into climate, it's actually a more narrow, because I don't know if you know this, but 95% of solutions for climate are enterprise, they're B2B, and about 70% are IoT, because they are mixing the physical with the virtual world. And so it's not different, right? It's just, instead of focusing on all IoT, which could be asset management, healthcare, aerospace, whatever, it's like, no, I focus on renewable energy, type of energy solutions, smart grid, their same IoT, their same enterprise. And so my expertise goes a lot farther. So that has been my focus. That's kind of has been my focus. And also it's because it's what I like to do, right? Every conversation that I have with a client right now is around enterprise, IoT, climate/energy. And I am able to bring in not only the product expertise, but the I've been in your shoes expertise, with the domain expertise. Because when you're working something like this that is more complex, when I call more generic product management coaches, you know, I've hired those coaches when I'm in those industries, and you have to spend half of your engagement telling them, you know, what a distributed energy resource is, and what is a battery, and how does a grid work. It's like, I have the domain, so I provide that value really quickly for my customers. Does that make sense?
Good. It does. And
do I have a cohesive story?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it makes total sense. And I know that a lot of the work that has to be done in climate technology today is intrinsically tied to IoT as well, because there's so much that has to be done to, I've worked with a couple of clients that are in the renewable energy space, and a whole lot of the software that we're working on is really managing the sensors and the devices and making that available to plant managers and so on and so forth, to really keep track of what's happening when. So I fully align that. I'm just kind of really always fascinated to hear about different people's journeys and what takes them from one stage to the next. Do we have any more questions that anybody wants to jump in with before we wrap up? If not, I do have one more that I'll throw to you. Pardon me. And it's a question that I like to ask everybody, Daniel. You know, you've launched the book. You're really focused. You moved to the Valley to focus on climate tech, and as you're focusing on climate tech right now, and the product management world, a little bit more precisely, what has your attention right now? What are you really focused on for your next challenge to solve? In a less general sense than just climate tech, what's your focus?
That's a great question. Well, my focus is, because I am restarting my coaching practice. It's really running a business and positioning myself as the climate tech advisor for these companies, right? And so I'm working on the business development and being a CEO of my own company, and how do I position myself for these companies? Who is basically following my own innovators map, right? What target from the whole climate space should I focus on? Should I focus on small companies, mid companies, large companies? What use cases? Who is the person that I need to talk to? What are their main challenges from a product/enterprise perspective? What kind of solutions can I package for them with all the expertise that I have on my courses and my book? And like, what is an appealing expertise? What is my positioning, my pricing, my offering, right? So it's fascinating. And so it's really running a business. And I think the product and the background on the expertise and all that I have down. It's more about running a business and getting these customers to believe in me and figure this out, right? I have the background and I have the chops to back it up. It's just, you know, it's a new pivot for me into the specific climate space, right? So
it is very different when you have an enterprise aligned around, organized around solving all of those things. And then when you kind of go into that space of being that solopreneur, in addition to everything else that you're doing, it's bringing all of those skills you learned in product to bear for one very focused effort as well. So
yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
And one of the things that one of the things that
go ahead.
A lot is that one of the main challenges that all these companies that I'm talking to, energy, climate, is transitioning to be more customer centric. And so therefore, everything that I do and my expertise fits really well, my book and my IoT courses and my expertise, because ultimately what they're looking for is to accelerate time to market by becoming more customer centric and having their teams be more customer centric. How do they do that? Well, they can bring somebody like me and I can help them with training and coaching so that they can be more customer centric, specifically with tools and techniques that work in this domain and in the B2B space. So that's what I'm learning. And it's like, oh, then it's not that far-fetched, you know?
Well, congratulations on the success. Thank you for all you're doing to influence and help other people grow in our industry. And best wishes on growing your coaching practice as well. I have to thank you again for coming and joining us today and sharing your thoughts with us. It's been a great session, and I can't thank you enough. But I'll try to at least shut it down and shut down the praise so that everybody can go on to their next meeting. But thank you for being here with us, Daniel, and I will look forward to talking to you again. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. Make sure that you're signed up for our mailing list or have joined the Product Coffee community over at productcoffee.com so that you can make sure that you're on top of every session that we have every single week. And we will look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks and have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.